Okay, I think we're about ready to start. All right, happy Sabbath afternoon, everybody. I'm glad we're still awake after that nice lunch that we had. So, speaking of food, we're going to talk a little bit about gut health today. Why is it important and how do we improve it? So, I'll start off with some statistics. According to the National Institutes of Health, digestive disease affects about 60 to 70 million Americans. And they suffer from gallstones, irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, bloating, constipation. There's 1 in 3 adults under age 50. No, under or over the age of 50 have diverticular disease over the age of 50. You're right. So I have it wrong on the screen. It's over the age of 50, they have diverticular disease. Colorectal cancer will affect more than 20 million adults in their lifetime. Incidence of non-alcoholic fatty liver cirrhosis, which is the deposition of excess body fat on the liver, is the leading cause of chronic liver disease and cirrhosis, and affects more than 100 million people in this country. 1 in 5 adults lives with gastroesophageal reflux disease, and that's known as heartburn, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. Millions of others suffer from irritable bowel syndrome and other inflammatory complications of the gut. So let's look a little bit at the leading causes of death in the US. Number 1, it's heart disease. Cancer is the second. It's followed by accidents or unintentional injuries. And then respiratory diseases, stroke, Alzheimer's, and diabetes. So this is what the leading cause of death was in the US up to the month of June this year. I don't know if you can see that little graph, that chart. So the number 1 is heart disease, like I mentioned. Second is cancer, accidents, and the one in pink down there, I don't think it's big enough to see. Yeah, it's too small. COVID. So we have to not ignore that. That's a huge issue going on and affects millions of people, or hundreds of thousands of people have died from it. But you'll notice it's number 7 on the list. So heart disease has been number 1, and more people die of heart disease every year. So about over 600,000 people die of heart disease every year. So of COVID, we had 500,000, around 500,000 deaths last year. So our digestive system is where the food goes and it travels, the nutrients, the food that we eat gets digested, broken down into nutrients that get absorbed into our body so we can survive. More than 2,000 years ago, Hippocrates, he was considered the father of modern medicine. He suggested that all disease begins in the gut. So what's the microbiome? So an ecosystem of microorganisms, also called microbes or bugs, consists of bacteria, viruses, parasites, fungi, thousands of different species. They live on our skin, in our eyes, in our guts, in our bodies, in the soil, in the water. They're everywhere. These bacteria thrive everywhere. We humans are mostly microbes. We have over 100 trillion of them, and microbes outnumber our cells by 10 times. So we have 10 more times microbes than cells in our bodies. So the majority of these microbes are in our gut or in our digestive tract, most of them in the large intestine. And this microbiome, gut microbiome, starts affecting us from the moment that we are born. So it's known now that infants get exposed when they are born through the birth canal. Their first exposed to the gut microbiomes when they come through the birth canal. Also now they believe that even before birth, babies are affected by the microbiome. And most of these microbes live in a symphony together. They work together. So there's good ones, bad ones, but usually the good ones kind of balance out the bad ones. And as we grow, our gut microbiome also begins to diversify. And there are thousands of different species of these microbes that live inside of our bodies. Most of them are extremely important to our health, and like I said, others may cause disease, but in general, they work together to keep our body in balance. And the food that we eat affects the diversity of this bacteria in our digestive tract. A higher microbiome diversity is considered good for your health. So altogether, these microbes weigh about 2 to 5 pounds, which is roughly the size of your brain. And they function together almost like another organ in our body and play a huge role in our immune response, in our immune system. And as mentioned, having too many unhealthy microbes will lead to disease. The bacteria or these microbes help digest our food, regulate our immune system, protect against other bacteria that cause disease, and they also, when they digest our food, help produce vitamins, including the B vitamins, B12, thiamine, riboflavin, vitamin K. All these are needed for a healthy working body and for blood coagulation. In the gut, the microbiome, the good bacteria help with like I mentioned, help with digestion. They multiply so that they keep the bad bacteria in check. So when you have the balance, it's called equilibrium. So what does the microbiome have to do with our health? We learned that the bacteria are mostly beneficial and they're not invaders, but there's also opportunistic bacteria that live. So that's why it's important what you eat, that what we eat, we get good bacteria to help prevent disease. Autoimmune diseases appear to be based in families, but they're not by DNA, they're actually by inheriting a family's microbiome. So here are several gut-related problems that are beyond the GI tract. So diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, muscular dystrophy, fibromyalgia, chronic pain, heart disease, fatigue, obesity, fatty liver, cancer, chronic and systematic inflammation, mental health problems such as depression and anxiety, migraines, insomnia. All these can be linked to our gut or to our microbiome. So having an unhealthy microbiome can influence our immune system into increasing our risk of having all these different diseases. The effect of the gut microbiome on the brain is also very profound. More than 90% of the serotonin hormones, it's the hormone that makes us feel happy, is produced in our digestive tract. So food cravings, often, that's where they originate from the gut, from what we have put in there and the microbiome that we have. Physical stress also will negatively impact the microbiome and can cause inflammation and also can lead to emotional eating. So because the gut forges such a strong connection with so many other elements of our well-being, it's important to keep our guts healthy. So there are some other examples of why our microbiome or our gut health is important. It's linked to obesity. Obesity is, people that are obese has been found that they have a poor combination of microbiomes in their gut. They did some studies and they found that the gut microbiome is different between obese and the lean twins. So if you have a lower diversity of bacteria and higher level of enzymes, you're more likely to digest more food and put on the pounds. Type 2 diabetes is also an autoimmune disease which is associated with the type 1 diabetes. It's associated with a less diverse gut microbiome. And there are several studies that have been done throughout the years to show these associations. So in our country, the obesity prevalence was 42% in 2017 to 2018. So 42% of population is obese, and 2/3 of the population are overweight. So obesity worsens outcomes of COVID-19. Adults with excess weight are even at greater risk during the COVID-19 pandemic. Being obese and overweight increases your risk of severe illness from COVID-19, and it may triple the risk of hospitalization due to COVID-19 infection. So as the rates of obesity, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, all of these continue to soar, what should I eat? What should we eat? There was a study done by the prestigious medical journal called The Lancet that they looked at a lot of data, and several experts combined all this data, decades of scientific research on health and nutrition. They come through it and put it together, and their conclusion was that a planetary health plate should consist of half a plate of vegetables and fruits, and the other half should be primarily whole grains, plant protein sources, unsaturated plant oils, and only optionally, modest amounts of animal source protein. That is the optimal diet according to the Lancet. And we also know that's the optimal diet according to the Bible. So what should we eat? We should eat a wide variety of fruits and vegetables, and it should be variety. Most of us don't eat a whole lot, and even as a country, there's only a limited amount of vegetables or variety of vegetables that are commonly used. Corn is used a lot. It's pretty much in everything. Soy is used a lot, but we should include the green leafy vegetables. We should vary them. The vegetables are a very good source of fiber, and that fiber some of it is soluble, some of it is insoluble, and that's the main fuel for the bacteria. Those good bacteria in our digestive tract, they grow from the fiber that we eat. So we need to aim for at least 3 large servings of vegetables a day from at least 4 or 5 different sources of vegetables. Also, we should include nuts and seeds and legumes in our diet. So cashews, walnuts, pumpkin seeds, black beans, lentils, all of these are not only good sources of protein, they also are good sources of fiber. So if one is worried about protein, they're saying, well, you're saying I should eat all these vegetables and avoid eating meats and animal products. Well, no need to worry about protein. An adult needs about 40 to 50 grams of protein per day. And there was a large study done in Canada in 2014 that showed that even strict vegetarians that didn't even consume eggs or cheese, they still got about 70 grams of protein per day from beans and from nuts and seeds. So it's a myth that keeps getting perpetuated that if you don't consume animal foods, you won't get enough protein. Actually, in this country where food is in abundance, there is no protein deficiency. Protein deficiency is somebody that is malnourished either because they don't have enough food or somebody that has digestive problems and they can't eat food or digest the food. Another thing to eat good for our gut health are the whole grains. And they're also a good source of fiber, and they also have vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients, antioxidants. And the grains should be whole, not processed, so not flour. It's important to have the whole grain, because if you use the flour, you took apart the grain and you're removing the fiber, you're removing the vitamins and the minerals. Also, we should try to eat prebiotic foods and probiotic foods. So prebiotic are foods that help develop the microbes in our gut, and they help diversify the good bacteria. They help reduce the inflammation and stimulate the immune system. And the prebiotics are flaxseed, almonds, apples, onions, bananas. Mostly all the vegetables are good prebiotics. And probiotics are foods that already contain some of these good, friendly, healthy bacteria. And we all know of lactobacillus and other probiotics. But fermented foods are known to contain probiotics, like kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha, miso, tempeh, yogurt, kefir. All these contain probiotics. So it's important to try to pay attention to what we eat. I don't necessarily recommend that we eat the kimchi if it's very spicy. Or kombucha, the same, it can have a lot of sugar in it. So be careful, read labels, read the ingredients, find out how much sugar is in there, how much spice. Carbohydrates. A lot of people have a problem with carbohydrates, and they think that carbohydrates cause inflammation or carbohydrates make you fat. Carbohydrates are good if they're complex carbohydrates that come from either the whole fruit, the whole grains, from legumes, and those contain vitamins C, E, they contain phytochemicals, magnesium, potassium, B vitamins, and also provide energy. So 60 to 70% of our diet should be from carbohydrates, from complex carbohydrates. Our brain can only run on carbohydrates or on starch. It uses the glucose from the carbohydrates. The same, our red blood cell. Our red blood cells need glucose. We have cells in our kidneys that they need glucose. The Okinawans, they eat 70% carbohydrates, and they're one of the healthiest populations and longest living populations on Earth. I don't know if you have heard of the Blue Zones. National Geographic had a special on it several years ago, and the author of that documentary, he also wrote a book called The Blue Zones, and he listed there the 7 populations in the world that live the longest and are the healthiest, and the Okinawans was one of them. Another group was the Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, California. Things to avoid. Did I skip a slide?
Okay. Ask questions.
Yeah.
Can you define more clearly the difference between complex and simple carbohydrates so we can get a picture of what is simple, what's complex carbohydrates?
Well, the complex carbohydrates, simply put, are they have multiple chains, so it's hard for your body when it digests it to break it down and turn it into sugar. It takes a long time. It travels through your pretty much entire digestive system before it gets turned into sugar. The simple carbohydrates, they get digested very quickly and they turn into sugar pretty quickly, and they raise your insulin, and insulin helps fat get into your cells, so that's why, and it stimulates your hunger hormones in response. So that's why the refined or the simple carbohydrates are the ones that cause most of the problems, and fatty liver disease and all those is caused by simple carbs or processed foods. So things to avoid. I think I'm missing a slide. Okay, So processed foods, these are things to avoid. Junk food. So you can see in that picture the things that we should avoid because they are devoid of nutrients. They're simple carbohydrates, full of sugar, low in fiber, and these will not help our digestive systems get any healthy bacteria.
Question.
Yes.
Do you consider milk or cheese as processed foods or natural food?
Well, cheese is a processed food. Milk, you can consider it a natural food because it's straight from the cow, goat, sheep. But cheese is a processed food. Unless some cheeses are unprocessed, like a cottage cheese that's just curdled, that can be a natural food. But I'm going to talk a little bit about milk too. So, we need to eliminate the sweet stuff. Sugary foods, sugary drinks, these are the major cause of fatty liver disease. So milk, I don't know if you can see on there. Maybe the font is not big enough. Milk is for babies. How many other mammals on this earth eat or drink milk after they have been weaned, other than humans? Okay, most people are lactose intolerant. That's about 3/4 of the population are lactose intolerant, and that's because we lack the enzymes to digest lactose. We have that when we are born, but that as we get weaned off from mother's milk, that enzyme, we no longer produce it. Also, milk is the #1 allergen. So most allergies are because of milk. It increases mucus and congestion. It's high in sugars, saturated fat, and cholesterol. Increases men's risk of dying from prostate cancer. Also, women have higher breast cancer mortality. Increases risk of osteoporosis and fractures. So we all know that we see on TV and everywhere, drink milk so you can have calcium, correct? Well, yes, milk has calcium, but the calcium from the milk cannot really be utilized by our bodies because the milk is also high in protein, and protein turns our body acidic, and that helps basically leach the calcium out of our bones. So we're better off getting calcium from spinach, from collard greens, from soy food like soybeans or tofu or tempeh. Sesame seeds. So if you combine some of these, you can easily get your daily allowance or your daily requirement of calcium from plant foods. Broccoli, greens are usually high in calcium. They have done studies and they have noticed that people that drink more milk, they have increased risk of fractures. Also increases risk of early death and overall mortality. The more milk you drink, the more likely you are to develop heart disease, to develop diabetes, hypertension. So they did a study, and people who consume the most milk and fewest vegetables, fruits, they had the highest mortality rates. And the study, I think, was done over 25 years.
I got a question on that. If you're drinking almond milk or soy milk and it's fortified with calcium, is that not getting the calcium?
No, that's good. It's fine.
So it's just regular milk that causes the proteins to...
Yes, because it's high in protein. It's high in casein.
Okay.
And I didn't mention the casein. The casein has been shown, they have done studies that it works like a switch to turn on and off cancer growth. In mice, they used casein from milk, and when they would feed the mice casein, their cancer tumors would just grow. When they stopped feeding them casein, their cancer tumors shrunk. So that's another reason to avoid milk. And when I say milk, I'm referring to all dairy products, not just milk. So cheese, ice cream, all these things. So, and milk also, it's not going to promote healthy bacteria in our intestines, in our digestive tract.
No more pizza either.
Well, they do make these alternative cheeses that are made with almonds and cashews and coconut. So even though they're not that healthy because they're processed foods. So the emphasis should be on eating whole foods as close as they can be coming from the garden or from the tree or from the nature. We should use some supplements. We should make sure we get sunshine every day. But supplement with vitamin D. Vitamin D has been linked to deficiency of vitamin D is linked to a deficient immune system. And during this last year with the COVID, it's been noticed that patients that do the worst, that they have worse symptoms, they have low levels of vitamin D. So we should take a vitamin D supplement every day. Even if you go outside every day, most of us use makeup with sunscreen on it or put sunscreen because we're told we need to avoid the sun and get sunscreen. We're not out long enough and the darker your skin is, the less likely you are to metabolize the vitamin D from the sun. So we all need to supplement. Vitamin D is actually a hormone, not a vitamin. Also, we should take a vitamin B12 supplement. If you don't eat animal-based products, you will not have vitamin B12, but actually people that eat animal-based products are just as deficient in vitamin B12. As we get older, our digestive tract doesn't assimilate it as well. So again, vitamin B12 should be supplemented every day or at least a few times a week, but should be supplemented.
Because I've heard that you can only get it from animal flesh or if you take some. So what else can you get vitamin B12?
Well, you get it in capsules. It's synthesized, cyanocobalamin or methylcobalamin.
It's not actually from animal products.
No.
It's from, it actually is found in the ground. And
Animals get it from the ground. They eat the,
it's transferred from the meat, and it's found in the meat because of the ground, not that.
yeah, because they eat off the ground. But vitamin D,
And from the udder of the cow, it's transferred to
So
milk.
I can start eating off the ground?
Yeah, stop using a plate. You won't have to take vitamin D supplements.
not off the floor, off the ground outside.
You can get it from
You had a question?
nutritional yeast.
What's your view on Juice Plus?
Nutritional yeast?
And what?
Juice Plus.
I'm not sure. What is that? Like a whole food supplement?
It's a supplement that's supposed to be the most researched food supplement.
Okay, so it's got like dried up fruits and vegetables that you mix in some water.
Like eating 17 fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, that's probably good.
And they tell you you need to eat fruits and vegetables, but most people are not.
Well, I'll tell you, those won't replace the fresh fruit and vegetables,
Right.
but it's something. It will help. Yeah, I don't think it's harmful unless it has sugar in it or other preservatives. I'm not sure if I know that brand exactly, but
There's no sugar, it's all crushed and dried, and it's.
yeah, so it's probably a good thing to have.
We've taken it for 30 years.
Yeah,
CDC did a whole thing on it years ago and said it was the best.
yeah, so that's healthy, but it's still not gonna replace fresh foods and fresh vegetables.
I have a quick question. I read something or heard something that you're not supposed to eat vegetables and fruit at the same time. Have you ever heard that?
Yes,
Is that true or is it not?
there is some truth to it. Yes, it's true. When you eat the vegetables and the fruits digest quicker, but the vegetables take longer. So if you eat heavy meals and you have lots of vegetables, the fruit sits on top of the vegetable. It can't really get digested because the vegetables are still churning in your stomach, and the fruit kind of ferments in your stomach, and fermented, it's not healthy. So that's why. So some people, maybe that's why they have bloating, because they maybe combine too many foods in that one meal. But potluck style, like we just did. But you gotta remember that's true to a point, but a lot of foods that we think they're vegetables, they're fruits. Like eggplant is a fruit, the bell pepper is a fruit. So I think it's more has to do with the sugar content of the fruit than.
There's botanical fruit and vegetable, and then there's culinary fruit.
So try to eat them separately, basically.
Yes.
I heard
Or you you can eat the fruit first and wait about 30 minutes and then eat your food.
My understanding is it makes a difference whether the vegetables are cooked or not. If the vegetables are cooked, you can eat it with fruit.
Yes,
But if it's, you don't want to eat raw vegetables
and raw
with
fruit.
raw fruit. Or for example, if the fruit is cooked, it behaves differently as well. So if one is cooked, particularly the vegetables, you can eat it with fruit.
I didn't know about the cooked fruit, but I knew about cooked vegetables, that it's okay too.
Thank you.
So a new study was published this year in the British Medical Journal of Nutrition and Prevention. And that study concluded that vegetarians are missing out on a lot more than just meat. And it's a really good thing. The researchers came to the conclusion after looking at thousands of people, actually they were healthcare workers, most of the people in their study, that there is a link between COVID and what you eat. So people that eat plant-based were 73% less likely to come down with the virus. Pescatarians were 59% lower risk of getting the virus. And those who reported following a low-carb, high-protein diet had the greater odds of moderate to severe COVID.
I think she had a fish. I don't know, because I've had a very bad experience last week. Well, I was an experience. I was telling a few brothers about it. There's a very, very well-known professor, Dr. What's his name? Germany died last. Pastor Clegorn died last week. And when he died from COVID, and when he died, I said I could bet he didn't get that shot. And then it started going around, because I know Pastor Clegorn very, very
He
well.
died?
Yeah, he was a yes, he died last week at age 67. But he was one, he and his wife, they never touched anything that was not healthy. So I knew from they called me and tell me that, did you hear that? I said, I know he didn't get that vaccine, because I know he's one of them who would not take that vaccine. And yet I can tell you, I remember we were at a wedding once, and I happened to make the vegetarian dish, and we were sitting at the same table, and they were like, should we eat it? What did they use? And I said, to make you feel better, I'm the one who did it. And I told her, and I said, okay, we were lucky to be sitting at the table.
Well.
Who made it. So I'm only saying this is that I don't know so much, because I was devastated.
Well, you
when
see,
I
it
heard
says only 73%, so he must have been part of the...
I think one thing to really realize, and most studies show the same thing, there's general trends, and then there's statistical outliers. And everything has statistical outliers. There's the 30-year-old that was very healthy and would die of a disease unexpectedly, and there's the 90-year-old that has smoked his whole life and doesn't die. So
That's true.
those are statistical outliers.
Yeah.
Most people do not fall in those outliers. Most people fall into the general trend. And that's what we need to focus on, is the general trend, because the outliers are just outliers. And some of us might be lucky enough or unlucky enough to be the outliers, but most people are not. That's why the statistical outliers are just out there.
So overall, the evidence is clear that you are what you eat. So we're going to have in the future another presentation more in detail about the whole foods and processed foods and caloric density, how certain foods, they're in small amounts, have a lot of calories, and some foods like vegetables and fruits you can eat large amounts and they have very little calories, and that our foods, how we eat affects our health. Overall, nobody can deny that how we eat, what we eat, influences our health for better or worse. There have been done thousands of studies on millions of people so far. Any other questions? Yes?
Did you go over again, what prebiotic versus probiotic, and a good example of each?
Prebiotics are foods. So seeds, onions, garlic, green leafy vegetables, fruits these are prebiotics. So those are foods that help our digestive tract develop good bacteria. And then probiotics are foods that already contain these bacteria, some of these healthy, friendly bacteria. And you can actually get probiotic capsules. I put it on here on the supplement under vitamin B12. How do I get back? Probiotics. So you can actually get a probiotic tablet and take a probiotic tablet. And since most of us eat a lot of processed foods, it's actually beneficial to take a probiotic tablet, especially if you take antibiotics. If you, for any reason, have to have antibiotic treatment because you have an infection, make sure you take probiotic. When you take the antibiotic, that's what it's called, antibacteria, kills all the bacteria, so the good and the bad.
Can you skip to your next slide? That's the very, that's it, thank you. And this is.
Any other questions?
I just have a quick question. Is there any way to do a test to see if your gut is healthy? Is there a test for that?
There are several tests, yes, yeah.
Dr. Steve Mahela, he talks about how during COVID he was part of a research study,
I've seen that.
and he actually, they do
Yeah, they do stool studies. Yeah, they do rectal studies and stool studies.
swabs and stool studies.
But
And
you
they
can't
see,
just, can you go to your doctor and ask
Yeah.
for one?
You can. You can go to your doctor. I'm not sure what a regular doctor, probably more of a naturopath or integrative medicine doctor will. I know some of these tests are not covered by insurance, but there are several studies you can do to check your microbiome.
From his research, he actually says that his wife had a much better microbiome, and she fared a lot better during their COVID, and his microbiome was not as healthy as hers.
And he was,
He didn't eat as healthy though, he said.
Yeah.
right.
The-
And he was much sicker.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
So they do swabs, they can do rectal swabs.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Sorry?
Did you get that on AmericanLife.com or just what Peter covers?
I know
We watched him when he spoke at the Village SDA Church in Michigan.
Oh, okay. I guess you could pull that up somewhere.
Village SDA Church.
The village?
villagesdachurch.com.
Or on YouTube Village.
It's gone, it's not on YouTube anymore. Oh, yeah, it is? Somebody said it wasn't.
SDAchurch.com.
Mm-hmm. Or just Village SDA. Hold on, I'll look it up and tell you.
It's good.
Yeah, it's villagesda.org actually. villagesda.org.
Village at?
villagesda.org.org.
Okay, so no church in it. just
No.
villagesda.org.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, and they had a symposium a couple of weeks ago on COVID and coercion and conscience. So he spoke then. All right. Any other questions?
What are the symptoms of deficiency of microbiome?
Well, usually you're fatigued, tired. So there's this slide that I had with bloating. If you're bloated, if you're constipated, if you don't eat enough fiber, you're more likely to be constipated. And the fiber is only found in fruits and vegetables. You won't get fiber from meat and dairy. Beans, legumes, yes. I kind of, I guess, include them in fruits and vegetables. Where is that? So if you're feeling tired all the time, I mean, if you have allergies, if your skin is breaking out all the time, those are some of the signs that your microbiome is probably not that great. And if you know that you eat a lot of sugary foods, a lot of processed foods, foods that come in packages and they have lots of ingredients that you can't even pronounce. So it's important to read labels,
Right.
not just, the front of the package says, oh, it's 100% whole grain, high in fiber, but you need to read the back, see how much sugar is in there, how much salt, how much fat, how many preservatives are in there. So we can do in the future talk on how to read food labels. Look at the food labels if anybody wants to learn more about that. So
I had a nutritionist say once to stay on the edges of the store and stay out of the middle of the store. And it's because all the processed food, or a lot of it, is in the middle, and it's true.
yes, very,
The fruits and vegetables and all that stuff, it's on the edges.
yep, very, very true.
But also the dairy and the meat are on the edge.
Yeah.
Well, they are. I ate that back then.
You have a question?
Yeah, but also, I heard that 20 years as an animist, but, when you get into it, you realize the way the food is grown matters a lot too. The
Yes.
nutritional value of our fruits, grains, and nuts and vegetables has gone downhill since the 1940s because the same corporations that are, running the slaughterhouses are also growing our fruits, grains, nuts, and vegetables, and they're taking shortcuts that are not very good for our health.
Right. So if you can, it's best to try to eat organic as much as you can.
I have a question, well, maybe a statement and then a question. A lot of people are talking about inflammation. And some of the major culprits of inflammation is not just meat and dairy, as you mentioned, but supposedly also all of the most populously grown grains in the entire world. So wheat, corn, they throw soybeans into that also. And I'm wondering, and they're saying that these also cause inflammation. My hypothesis, and I want to see what you think about it, my hypothesis is the reason that those things cause inflammation is because of the way that they're grown. Because they have Roundup Ready corn, they pour pesticides and herbicides and all this stuff in it to the point that they make it unhealthy.
Yes.
That the plant itself wasn't unhealthy, but we've created it so that the body can't take it anymore because of the way that it's grown.
Yes.
So my question is gluten dangerous to eat because it causes inflammation, or is it the problem with the way that it's processed, or is it a problem with the way that it's grown?
So people that have celiac disease, for those truly gluten is detrimental. They shouldn't eat it. They're missing in their intestines this tiny little cilia to help move the gluten around their digestive tract. So other than that, people can be gluten intolerant or more sensitive, but that's because the gluten that we eat comes from the wheat that you said it was treated with pesticides. First of all, the wheat that we eat now has been hybridized back in the 60s, I think. So for like 1 acre of wheat that you plant now, you can grow as much as you were growing before, I think 5 acres. I'm not completely sure of the numbers, but they hybridized the wheat, so the wheat used to be really tall, now it's really short, but it produces a lot more wheat kernels. And that's one of the problems. So the wheat was changed, was hybridized, it was changed. It's not what our parents, grandparents grew up with. But now, not also do they do that to it. They add all these pesticides to it to grow it, and also before they harvest it, they again spray it with Roundup or some pesticide to make it bloom so they can get as much wheat out of it as, I guess they wouldn't get as much if they don't spray it right before they harvest it. So that's why it's important to eat organic wheat if you eat wheat, as much organic as you can.
It's extremely hard to find non-GMO, organic wheat and corn. It's extremely hard.
Well, so if it's organic, by definition, it's not GMO. So anything organic, by definition, the USDA doesn't allow it for it to be a GMO. But yeah, GMO corn.
The difference is they don't test for GMO. Nice label, organic.
Yes,
It could be GMO because they don't really test for it.
so they just trust what the farmer says.
It's a very rigorous process to actually have an organic farm.
Certified. To be certified organic.
But they don't test for GMO.
It's still better than eating bacon.
Honestly, I think it comes to a point where you have to trust.
Right, so you can grow your own corn if you like, and your own soy and wheat. I mean, God will complete where there's lack if we do our best. So, people that don't have the privileges and the abundance that we have here can be just as healthy, if not even healthier, with what they have, because that's all they have. So God helps us all. We just have to do our best with what we know and what we have.
Yeah, Brother Chung has a big problem. We don't eat meat, and he's really, really allergic to soy. And nearly everything that you look at, the cereal and all of those things, they have soy in it. Even the medication that he give him, he's really allergic to it.
Yeah, so unfortunately there are people like that they have these allergies and they have to avoid. And yes, corn and soy and wheat, they're in pretty much everything. It makes it difficult. But it kind of drives you to eat more natural foods. So people like that usually tend to stick to a more simple diet. Don't eat not as much food from the store or packaged food. But it can make it more difficult, especially if you're traveling, if you're out. But I don't really have a solution other than you have to avoid it. If you're allergic to it, you have to avoid it.
But most of the healthiest food has soy in it. I don't know why. Every label you read has soy.
Well, then they're not all that healthy.
Most, I say.
So to me, the healthiest foods are whole foods that are in their original form, how they came from the garden or from the tree. Those are truly healthy foods. The other stuff, even if you have like these fake meats or analog meats or farm meats, whatever you want to call them, those are not healthy. Those are still processed foods. I mean, they may be slightly better than meat. They don't have the cholesterol and all the fat, and they may have some fiber. But if they have so many chemicals added to them, preservatives, they're not healthy for you. All right, any other questions? Well, let's close with a prayer. Dear Father in heaven, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to be here today and learn about what is healthy for us. We ask that you please be with us and guide us. Help us do our best with what we know and what you have given us. We ask that you please continue to be with us and our church, with all our members, and give us health. In Jesus' name, we praise you. We thank you. Amen.